Minneapolis before to cover a case, and we really loved it. So, yeah, let's just jump in. We've got Lainey with us already. Lainey Hobbs is an incredible human being. We will pull her up in just 1 second when I can click on it.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Joining us even when she is not feeling that great. We love it.
You know, I do what I can for my people. I wouldn't miss this for the world. And I am very thrilled and honored to be a part of this. I am always just happy whenever you guys include me in anything that you're doing.
Well, we absolutely wouldn't have it any other way. For those that don't know Lainey, she is the host of several podcasts over the last few decades. How long have you been doing this, Lainey? It's been a minute.
Oh my gosh, decades. I feel not really. Calm down.
That old.
Yeah, so I've been podcasting some 7 years. I've been doing it since 2016 officially. So it's been a minute, maybe not a decade, but I'm not at the Gen Y level yet in terms of time on the mic. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Seven years has gone by so fast and so much has changed.
It has. And in that 7 years, she's created various podcasts. Currently, she's got True Crime Cases with Lainey. She also has a paranormal podcast called It's Haunted What Now? Are you bringing back True Crime Convos?
Yes, actually, I'm bringing it back on April 3rd with a interview I did with a wonderful mother who's also an advocate for her daughter, Joan D'Alessandro. So Rosemary D'Alessandro is who I'm going to be bringing True Crime Convos back with. And it's a great conversation on a grief journey and turning her pain into purpose.
Excellent. She's also the co-founder of the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Fest, which is the greatest festival we have ever been to. And it's honestly the reason we know everybody that's going to be here today. It launched us into our podcast community, our group, our peeps. What are we calling it? What do we call it? Our squad?
Our clique.
Our clique. Yeah.
Our clique.
Our little clique.
Okay, our clique.
So we just loved it. It's an incredible event. And Lainey, do you want to plug it?
Sure. So the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival is happening July 12th through the 14th in Denver, Colorado. It is an weekend, I would say like an intense weekend full of ethics, advocacy, and really getting to be on the same playing field and enter the same playing field as some of the best creators out there in true crime who have the same mindset that you do. You get to meet, I think what makes us special about our festival in particular is that you get to meet family advocates, you get to meet survivors of crime, and they take the front row, like they take the front seat and they get on the stage and share their cases or share their stories. And it is just so incredible. I think Sean had it right. And Sean is also from the Sins and Survivors podcast, which is an incredible podcast focused on domestic violence in Las Vegas, or touches on that in Las Vegas. It's an incredible show. It really is life-changing. It's transformative. It transformed, I think we'll talk about it later, but it transformed even how I approach true crime. And again, I've been doing it for 7 years and so much of the landscape has changed. And I just think it's such a positive thing. And so I'm very excited for this year.
Awesome. You talked a little bit about the greats of podcasting, and we have one stuck down here in the green room. I'm fixing to pull him up. So I hope he's ready. Hi, Josh.
Am I a great?
You are.
Yeah. I mean, one of the greats. Calm down.
I said A.
Everyone, please welcome Josh Hallmark. He is from True Crime BuLLSh, Unsafe Spaces, the Karen and Ellen letters, Our Americana, Studio Both And. Again, kind of like Lainey, I could go on and on about Josh, but I'm not going to because no one came here to hear me talk. So welcome, Josh, to the pod live stream.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to talk about before we just jump into all the crazy questions? What do you got going on right now?
Yes.
I'm leaving to go to Mexico in 4 hours. And I had to get 2 episodes out are done, and I just like 2 minutes ago wrapped on next week's episode. So now I can go home and pack and get on a plane.
And sleep on the plane, I hope.
Hopefully.
He's like, that's the goal. But thank you so much for joining us for this little bit of time. But I would be stressed if I was you. That's the end of it.
But you know what? Like, I run on stress, so it's fine. I just keep reminding myself in like 24 hours, I'll be on a beach with a pina colada. And
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can
That's
sleep there. You can sleep there. So, Josh, you also have a big event coming up, similar, but not the same as the True Crime Podcast and Paranormal Festival. We have the Berkshires. I'm going
Berkshires.
Berkshires.
Hi, I'm from Texas. We don't pronounce anything correctly down here.
Right. You're thinking of Brookshire.
Yeah, that's it. The Berkshires Podcast Festival. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the Berkshire Podcast Festival is October 18th through the 20th here in Berkshire County in Western Massachusetts. And it's a combination of the two things I love the most, which are the Berkshires and podcasts. And I wanted to share the Berkshires with podcast listeners and podcasts with Berkshire's residents. So it's going to be a full day event for general admission, and then VIP ticket holders will get a little cocktail party and trivia on Friday night, and a little studio tour and some private sessions Sunday morning. But we're still lining people up, but right now all of you will be there. Bob Ruff and Janet Varney from Truth and Justice, Justin Evans from Generation Y, Lucy from Wine and Crime, and unless an engagement gets called off, we won't have Amanda, but fingers crossed. I'm trying to think. Charlie from Crime Lines, Eric, of course, from True Consequences. Just a bunch of people. Go to BerkshirePodcastFestival.com. You can see the lineup. We're going to do a reading of the Karen and Ellen letters, which was a blast the last time we did a live show of that. So it'll be really exciting. And the Berkshires are I've lived all over the place. It's my favorite place in the country. It's beautiful. So I'm encouraging people to come and just soak in autumn in the Berkshires. And it's going to be peak leaf peeping season. So come for that too.
It's going to be great.
It was amazing last year. Poor Melissa had to miss out. She got sick last minute and she missed out. We had a blast. It's beautiful. We loved it there and I can't wait to go back.
And good eats, good food.
I'm looking forward to it this year. I have already blocked off my calendar. I will be there this year. But yes, an amazing event.
Yeah. So I dropped the link in the comments. If you want to go get your tickets, go get them. We recommend getting them early. But let's just go ahead and jump into why we're here. Let's talk about Advocacy Con for a little bit. How did both of you become involved in this project outside of just knowing our wonderful personalities and Eric?
I'll let you go first because I can talk.
Okay. I met all your lovely faces at True Crime Podcast Festival 3 years ago. Wow. But for me, like, advocacy came in creating the show. I had worked on True Crime BuLLSh for years before it was released out into the world. And when I went to finally press post, I had all these ethical dilemmas about, what I was putting out into the world and how people were going to take it and what they were going to do with it and how it was going to affect people. And so I just instantly had this crisis of conscience and started exploring the best ways to produce true crime. And, people weren't really having conversations like that back in 2018. And so there weren't a lot of answers. And so you kind of had to make it up as you went along and do your best to, do more good than harm. And I think actually that's one of the things I bonded with, Lainey and I have been friends for almost a decade now. And I know. And that's kind of how the friendship started, was how we were navigating producing true crime content in a way that was ethical. And then with Laura Norton and Brooke from the Fall Line, talking to them about how to not only be a true crime podcaster or an investigator, but an advocate in your writing and in your research and honestly, teaching your audience. I don't like to think of myself as a teacher, but I do like to think that I write my show in a way that guides the audience to make ethical decisions, and that will advocate for the people we're talking about and the people in their lives and the cases that they care about. So I guess like high level, that's how. And as I've gotten further and further into this, I've learned more lessons, I've made more connections. Again, through True Crime Podcast Festival, I've gotten to know, people like Julie Murray very well. And, I'm very good friends with Kaz, who works for Private Investigations for the Missing and works with advocates. So it's just if you find the right people in the true crime world, you can learn how to do this very well. And when I say do this, I don't just mean podcast, but I mean consume true crime media.
Absolutely. A lot of Josh's journey is similar to mine. I entered into true crime podcasting at a time when there was not a ton of, true crime podcasts out there. And there was no consideration for advocacy. These conversations around ethics were just not happening. And for me, I talk about this a lot, whenever I do interviews and stuff like that, is I was really intimidated with the idea of advocacy. It was intimidating for me to consider reaching out to a family or to a survivor or anything like that. Because my heart was in the right place in the sense that I didn't want to re-traumatize them. I didn't want to bring up these issues and go, hey, you've heard like 50 podcasts cover this case now, and now I want to do it. Are you okay with it? And I think that my journey throughout, it really changed for me in the 2022 festival that we had in Dallas, where I got to meet Julie. I got to meet Mariah Day, who's Betsy Faria's daughter, Jason Watson Person, who's an incredible advocate as well. And seeing everybody and Katie Palmer's family, meeting everybody in person and really kind of seeing how tangible everybody is and how, despite the tragedies that they encounter in their life, they're still going on. And I find that resilience to be so admirable and incredible. It truly did change my life. I had been so disgusted with my podcast name prior to changing to True Crime Cases with Lainey. It started initially, just as a silly little thing. And then as I started meeting them, I was kind of embarrassed and everything. So it really changed for me in that capacity. And doing the rebranding has just been great, and the advocacy efforts, I still consider myself to be really new to this. I'm doing my best. I'm learning from people that I admire and that I trust, and navigating it all. Navigating advocacy has been, I think, a blessing, for me, at least as a creator, and then as a person in general. It's been life-changing for sure.
Yeah, so we had that same kind of evolution, if you will, of we had a name prior to the current name we have, and when we thought of it, it sounded great. It rolled off the tongue, and that's all that mattered to us at that time. And then we also met Jason Watts. We started meeting families. We started getting out there and doing things like foot searches and being hands-on and side by side with the people that have to go through this day to day. It's an evolution. And I think that it's now a discussion that people are really having, that it's okay to say you didn't know this before, but now I know it and I've learned and I'm doing better now. And we're going to continue to learn. Every case is different. Every victim is different. Every family member feels differently. So it's a constant evolution of yourself. And we applaud you for the rebranding, and we followed suit as if you didn't know that about us. So we appreciate y'all's guidance with our journey through this as well, because we do look up to you guys, and look to you for support and your knowledge. We do kind of steal that from you a little bit.
Take it all.
Yeah, and the same, we felt cringe about telling people our name, law enforcement or families. It would just be like embarrassing to even say it to others. But it was cute. We did love it back then. But Lainey, when you decided that you wanted that name change, like what were your steps in that? How did you come up with your new name, and why was it important?
Well, I mean, as you guys know, you know me pretty well now. I'm not very creative on the naming front. I'm the previous podcast was True Crime Fan Club. And I was like, yeah, that's great. And so I was like, well, what do? I cover true crime cases and I'm the one who does it. So that's truly how I came up with the name. I was like, True Crime Cases with Lainey. I didn't want to try and come up with any type of fun little name or anything like that. I really just wanted it to be synonymous with me, so that if you knew you heard a podcast called True Crime Cases, likely what's going to follow is Lainey. So there was some branding effort there in that sense, but not a ton. Like I didn't do any marketing research or anything like that. I was just like, True Crime Cases with Lainey. We'll figure it out. And all it took for me was I have a very savvy information security rock star who lives in my home, who I love dearly, who is my husband. So all I do is tell him what I want. And he went and made the changes for me, redirected everything and got it all done. So I was like, it was literally the push of a button. Because for me, it was like, hey, can you change everything on my thing? The only thing I really had to do was update my logo. I got to keep some of the things that I really liked about it. And that's really it. So my rebranding for me, it was more of a sentimental thing, because I had that podcast name forever. And even though I cringed at it, it was what I was known as. Like TCFC was Lainey. And so I was afraid to lose listeners. I was afraid to lose an audience. But then at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? If you only care about my podcast name and you don't really care about the content, then I'm not worried about losing you. And after I pressed, refresh on my website and made the posts and everything, everybody just met me with a lot of kind words and, applause. And I felt great about the change. And so I'm so glad that I did it. And I'm so glad that if it encouraged others to do the same thing, to kind of have a retrospective on their names and the selections, then I'm very happy to have made a difference in that way.
Awesome.
I love that. All right, Josh, let's talk to you a little bit about your work with advocacy and working with victims and families and unidentified people, namely with the NamUs 45. Let's talk a little bit about it. What's going on with that?
So it's so funny because like I never think of my work as like advocacy, and I hope that that's reflective of like caring, because you just are like, it becomes ingrained in how you do what you do, God willing. But yeah, the NamUs 45. So, when the FBI was going through Keyes' computers, they found thousands of images and then ran them through an image matching software against images on NamUs, which is the US government's missing person database. And there were 45 matches. That's not to say that those were all the pictures on his computer, because there were many more. They just didn't have matches in NamUs. And so I started going through those and realizing pretty quickly that Keyes certainly was not responsible for more than half of them. But we determined through his interviews and just looking at the map and places he traveled that he was likely Googling missing person and then a state and a date. And so for every missing person on that list that wasn't a Keyes victim, they likely corresponded either geographically or chronologically with a Keyes victim. So we started using that as a tool and then realized, the show has gotten bigger, and every time we talk about a missing persons case, it gets attention. And so we thought, what a great way to highlight these 45 missing people, most of whom have not gotten much media attention at all, by bringing them up in the show as often as possible. So we don't use them as a reference point. We'll, when we do, we'll bring up their whole story. So it's not just like this person who disappeared from here on this date. It's like, okay, here's an opportunity to talk about this case. And then we started doing like mini episodes devoted to each of them, so people could hear their full stories, even though they aren't Keyes victims and don't have much to do with True Crime BuLLSh. So that was how, we decided to, I guess, get into the advocacy game on the podcast. And I'm really proud of that work. There are these cases like kids who disappeared 40 years ago that no one's ever heard of, or, people who aren't editorial victims, women in their 50s and 60s, people of color whose cases, you Google and you might get one local report on. So it's been a real honor to be able to bring those cases more attention.
That's amazing. And you're also looking for Keys's victims that are not included in that name as 45, people that may not even be known to these databases and whatnot.
That's how the show started. Like, the secret's out. I'm not a huge true crime guy, but I just have so much empathy for the families of missing people. And that is how my interest in Keys started was, we had a killer and we knew who he was, but we didn't know who his victims were. And we knew that most of them had never been recovered. So I just couldn't get out of my head that there were all these families who didn't know what happened to their loved ones. And so then I became the world's foremost expert in a serial killer, because not an interest in serial killers, but an interest in, trying to identify these people and give their families some sort of resolve.
Yeah.
And then you started Unsafe Spaces, which is really in my neck of the woods down here in Tampa, Florida, which is also, doing that same kind of work, giving a voice to the voiceless. How is that going?
It's out of every show I've ever done, it's the one I am most proud of, because that to me is true advocacy. It's funny, I didn't even think about that when we were talking about advocacy. It's a cultural podcast that happens to focus on crime. I don't think of it as a true crime podcast, and it really is looking at the way that we treated gay people in the 80s and 90s, and how through our treatment of them, people were willing to get away, or were able to get away quite openly with harming, raping, assaulting, killing gay men. And so it's a breakdown of how anthropology, politics, religion kind of aided and abetting in the murders of gay men. And also there are many unidentified there are many missing gay men in the Florida area whose cases are cold. And so it's an opportunity to bring attention to them, because many of them, again, you do a Google and you don't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will say that Unsafe Spaces, out of the collection of work that you have, is probably one of my favorite. The opportunity you've given a survivor to share their side and experience has just been incredible to me. It wasn't what I expected either. And so I'm a true crime consumer through and through. I am the prototype for true crime. I consume it pretty much every day. And for me, it is such a great show that I absolutely look forward to hearing. And I really am amazed by everything that you do. I love you so much. So it is, for those of you who have not listened to it, you are missing out on an incredible show, because it is really, really good.
Thank you. It kind of destroyed me. Just as a victim of a very similar crime to, what we're talking about on the show. It was an unexpected challenge. And then it also brought up just a lot of anger for how the gay community has been treated, that I'm talking to both of my therapists about. So yeah, it gutted me. And I hope more people find it. True Crime BuLLSh gets more than 10 times the downloads that show does. And I think that show is just as, if not more important.
Yeah, I agree.
Same.
Posted the link in the chat if anyone wants to go on over there and subscribe.
You guys are on top of this.
I know, killing it.
Listen, we did a lot of prep work for this live stream, and then for it to crap out on us in the first 30 seconds on the first length was really disheartening, but it's all right. We're making up for it, guys.
You got it.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about creating safe environments for families. That's something we are really passionate about with Advocacy Con. Everything about this conference is going to be for families and connecting resources and nonprofits and everything that a family member could need when having to go through these horrific and traumatic events with their loved ones. And that's something that is extremely important to you, Lainey, as well, at the True Crime Podcast and Paranormal Festival. I said that backwards, True Crime, Paranormal, and Podcast Festival. So talk to us about how you kind of created and cultivated that environment.
Well, for me, I consider myself, the bouncer of TCPF. I have the final say in who comes and who doesn't. and who I kind of allow into our space, just the same way that I would do in my own home, right? Like, just because I know you or know of you, I wouldn't just let you in my house and be like, hey, come over here, no problem. And it's the same way. I want survivors, I want family advocates to feel that they own that space, that this is meant for them, and we're here to really help advance their efforts. So I am extremely, I think you guys know this about me too, but for those that don't know me very well or haven't met me, I am extremely protective and loving over my friends. I will have your back 100%, and fight whatever fight you need me to fight for you, because I am extremely just like loyal to the bone. And I'm the same way with families and survivors. I protect them at all costs, because I wish more creators understood that the reason they have their success, and the reason that they have the platforms that they do, is because somebody had to either lose their life or go through something extremely horrific in order for them to have a story to tell on a podcast. Um, and I wish people dialed it down a little bit more in realizing that, and removed their egos from the content that they create. And that's really my goal, is I want to prove that it is possible to focus on ethics. It is possible to focus on advocacy and still be successful as a creator without compromising your own values and your own personal ethics, or creating some if you don't have any, in terms of how you approach your content creation and stuff. I want people to think about that whenever they create. And for people who've never been to the festival, I think it's a very overwhelming weekend for an energy. Like, it's an energy suck. Like, you are meeting everybody, you are invigorated, everything. I think to me it's the best thing ever, but then I need a break for like a couple weeks. But nothing beats the feeling after that of when I get messages, from families who've come, or survivors who've come, who've said like, this was incredible. I'm so thankful that, you gave me this opportunity. And I'm like, I didn't give you any opportunity. Like, you gave me the opportunity to be able to help, share your story with my platform. I'm always going to use my platform for something like that. So, if there's ever a family out there, especially as we're heading into the Denver area, that I could, help and bring into the festival, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do whatever I can to help. So it's just really important to me to make sure and maintain that space. I won't ever compromise that for anything.
Awesome. You're also super big about collaboration. And
Yeah.
honestly, the first time Whitney and I had ever done a live show in front of anyone was at TCPF. Terrifying, by the way. I said I would never,
welcome.
ever do it, but it happens. So, what do you think? How do you think like collaboration plays such a key role into either growing your podcast or advocacy work?
Yeah.
Sorry, these are like tough questions.
No, it's huge, I think. I benefited a lot when I first started in podcasting, with creating genuine friendships with creators, and having their trust and trusting me and my content, and vice versa. And using those friendships to say like, hey, how can we help each other? Or what can we do? Like doing promo swaps and stuff. Um, and taking it upon myself on my own to say like, hey, I'm talking about your show because I like it on my podcast, and I just wanted to let you know. And I benefited by having such great relationships with much larger creators than myself. And I wanted to pass that kind of good faith along. I always maintain that I will help anybody who reaches out to me, because I reached out to some really big creators at the time, and they responded to me. They answered my questions about like what mic to get and things like that. And so I was like, if I could bother them, with the 50 questions I had via Twitter DM, and they responded to literally everyone, then I am never too busy to help somebody and offer any type of assistance that I can as it relates to creating a show. On the advocacy front, I've learned from you two most of all of how to do that, and how to kind of step forward and be brave in doing that, because it was still intimidating for me going to the march for Leon and the cold case down in South Texas, or not South Texas. You get the idea. Everything's South to me. Was my first real event in advocacy, like actually going out and doing something, doing some type of march to bring awareness and stuff. And it was, for me, again, another transformative thing where I was like, what can I do here? Like, what can I do in Allen, or what can I do somewhere else to help? So being able to collaborate with you guys has only helped me. And so I continue to want to do that even with some of the newer creators that I meet to kind of help invigorate them to do the same.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Stop.
You'll make me cry. Yeah, you'll make me cry. I'm the crier. Someone once told us a long time ago that just showing up for families means more than you'll ever know. And that really stuck with us. And actually, who told me that will be on in this next section coming up. Her name's Haley. She's a pretty awesome person. But we'll but we'll talk to her in just a minute. We're gonna get Josh out of here since he has to go pack for his trip in a few hours. The last question I have for Josh is, how do you? We get this question a lot, and we never know how to answer it. How do you measure success in advocacy?
I mean, look, I would say the answer is three-pronged. The first is, if through your show you're guiding other people to be advocates, and I know I talked about that earlier, but to me that is a successful show, is one that is not only entertaining and monetized, but is doing more good than harm and is teaching the audience how to go out into the world and be better true crime consumers. So that's the first. I think the second is, like, for me, which, I mean, there's a little bit of ego in this, is like knowing that you're doing a good enough job that the people who matter want to work with you and want to talk with you. You know, like, I've become friendly with Julie Murray and Jason Watts and Tara Newell. I've had police agencies reach out to me asking my opinion on certain cases. Like, that means a lot to me, because I know if I wasn't doing this ethically and I wasn't presenting myself as someone who was advocacy forward, like, those relationships wouldn't exist. And then the third is, like, just putting out meaningful ethical work that benefits everyone. You know, I've had family members reach out, and my rule, which I learned from Laura Norton and Brooke, is like, don't reach out to families unless they have an advocate or are actively looking for answers, and unless you have actual information that can help them. So I don't. And, like, sometimes I will cover something without reaching out if that's the case. And I've had family members reach out and say, like, thank you not only for doing this, but for doing it well and, like, caring about the loved one, not using them as a data point or a reference point. So that to me is success.
Well said.
Thanks. I hope so.
Love it.
Well, we want to thank you for your time, especially since you were crazy busy today and are jet setting off being the world traveler that you are. Enjoy your vacation. Have a pina colada for us. Thank you very much for spending your time with us, and I'll pull you out. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks for inviting me, and thank you everyone for being here.
Bye. All right, Lainey, hang on with me here for a second.
No, thanks. Haley's coming up. I got it. I'm kidding. Just for the stream, in case anybody knows, I love Haley.
I am going to bring Haley in, just to bring Haley in.
Oh, great.
Haley Gray is here with us from Haley Gray Research and True Crime Podcast Training. She's one half of them. We'll have the other half coming up pretty quick here too. We owe our relationship with Haley. With Haley.
Oh my gosh, I gotta go.
That's gonna be.
Do not call us that.
That's just relationship name now. Is Haney. We owe everything that we have with Haley to Lainey for our True Crime Podcast Festival meetup in Kansas City. So thank you for that.
You know, you're welcome, I suppose. Apologies on that. No, I was kidding. I will give her flowers, right, with Haley. She is an incredible person. If you ever, like, from an ethical standpoint, she has never wavered. And she was talking about ethics and talking about advocacy and how you approach true crime content since before we were all talking about it. She taught me so much, and I really do value her opinion. I will go to her quite often and ask her for a lot of assistance and feedback in certain things. And the majority of my team has come from Haley, that helps me on behind the scenes with true crime cases with Lainey. And so I would say that if you are interested in becoming a true crime content creator and you are going to be doing it all on your own, invest in Haley's training on the True Crime Podcast training, because there's nobody else I trust and nobody else I would blindly say you should hire outside of Haley. And I work in HR. I would never say something like that, like on purpose. But she is somebody that you don't ever have to question the quality of the content that you're getting, the legitimacy of the sources that she's looking for. She is incredible, and she has done so much for so many families. She's inspired me. She's part of the trio of inspiration, which would include all of you. So thank you, and that it will be the last time that I publicly say anything kind to Haley. Everything will be mean going forward.
But we're recording it, so we will have it to recreate later.
I said it under duress. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for having me on too.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Lainey. If you want to go to True Crime Podcast and Paranormal Festival, we dropped their website in the comments. Of course, we'll be sharing it all over social media. Use code advocacy for a discount. That's in Denver, July 12th through 14th. So don't forget. And thanks, Lainey, for spending your time with us, even though you weren't feeling well.
That's okay. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi.
Hi.
It's just you and I for now. Melissa's having technical difficulties. That's the theme of the evening tonight. Yay, guys, for us. But luckily, we have the other Melissa and Mandy with us. And I love that she changed her name to say the other Melissa. It makes me so happy.
I didn't want there to be any confusion.
I absolutely love it. Welcome. Go ahead, Liz.
Sorry, had a little of tech issues, which I figured that this would happen. It's been happening lately, but I'm glad I'm back for the introduction of Mandy, Melissa, and Haley. Hey, sorry, I left right when you joined.
It happens. All right. So on the bottom of the screen, we have the other Melissa and Mandy from Moms and Mysteries. They are also board members of the Bright Again Foundation. We are truly honored to have you here with us. So thank you for spending your Thursday evening, because it's late. Well, Melissa's late, but she's always late with me. We consider it late anyway.
No, you're good. I mean, you're catching us at the tail end of the day, so please don't take anything we say as gospel at this point. But we're happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
I only panicked a little bit when I realized it was Central Time, and I was like, "Oh crap, that's actually 8 p.m. here." So a lot changes between 7 and 8 p.m. at my house.
Agreed. Same here. I'm like, I had to figure out who's picking up this kid from martial arts. It's a lot going on. Luckily, school is out for my kids tomorrow, so it feels like a Friday night. So when she said Thursday, I was like, oh yeah, right, it is Thursday.
Yeah, it's helpful for sure.
The run-in joke is when Melissa and I have something, she's like, is it your time or is it my time? And I'm like, it's my time. And she's like, okay, your time. And then we can figure it out. We don't like to do time zones well.
No, we don't do well at all. I sent Haley a text message like an hour and a half ago and was like, by the way, which time zone is this? So we had something else to record. So Mandy and I were able to record our other thing already. So it's like we were way ahead of the game for once. And the last time. Once, never.
That's how it works out for Whitney and I as well. We're like, oh, we're ahead. Now we could take a break for a weekend. Yeah. And
then all of a sudden somebody's got a tickle in their throat and it's over. Like just down for the count.
Just done. We're done.
Glad to know it's not just us, that other people also don't have their stuff together. We just assumed it was us.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope we make you feel better.
You did. So thank you for that.
That's good.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you guys are involved in. This is going to be really difficult. The other Melissa and Mandy, we didn't think this through, Melissa. We should have changed your name.
You can call me Tom, the other Melissa.
I was like, what?
I know, it took me a second too, and I came up with it.
Or
Actually-
as Mandy and I like to. Oh, were you gonna say it?
Well, I was gonna say, I heard Whitney say Liss. Do you call? Okay, sometimes I will call Melissa Melly. She doesn't necessarily love that nickname. But
I heard about this in
I
Orlando.
reject it. Haley does it too. They both, and I think it's only when they want something from me. They'll say, "Hi, Melly," and I'm like, "Ugh." But it works every time. I'm a pushover.
I feel that. I'm also a pushover. But let's talk a little bit about y'all's work with the Bride Again Foundation, who we will have at Advocacy Con. We will have the Bexley boxes there because Haley's going to be there. So we're just exploiting her table for as much space as we can use for all of the things she does.
That's Haley's best feature. You can just put it all on her. It's great.
Yes. So in September of 2022, Melly, Mandy, and I had the opportunity to work with Kirsten Bride Again. It was actually kind of kismet how the whole thing happened. We had decided to start working on unsolved cases every now and then, and Kirsten actually reached out to us at the same day that we made that decision. And Melissa had actually sent me a link to Kirsten's husband's story, Jared Bride Again. And she was like, when we start working with families, I'd love to cover this one. And so the fact that she reached out, it was just like really kismet. And we hit it off with Kirsten immediately. And I would say she changed our lives for sure. I don't want to speak for everyone, but working with her and learning at the time, Jared's murder was unsolved. And so that was our first unsolved case that we ever did. And when we were talking to Kirsten, she was saying, she really wanted to turn her grief into something positive because Jared was such a positive guy. And so she came up with the Bexley box idea, which is a huge chest that she has curated to fill with all kinds of items, and they go to police stations for children who are taken to the police station and don't have anything there for them. So the chest is just full of all kinds of stuff. I think it's around $500 at least worth of stuff. Kirsten's working on putting together a dollar amount for it, but it has everything: sippy cups, every size of diaper, snacks, which Melissa made a really good point for that, where we had nut-free, dairy-free snacks. It's just very universal for everyone. So when Kirsten created the Bride Again Foundation, which is what provides the Bexley boxes, she so graciously asked us to be part of the foundation. So I'm the secretary, and I'll let Melissa and Mandy talk about what they do. And anything I missed, because I know I was jumping all around there.
I've been taking notes. There's so much. I'm the treasurer, but I don't think I'm the treasurer. Trust me with your money, I guess. I don't know. I think I have a face that people trust. But really what I love about the Bride Again Foundation, and back to what Haley was saying when we met Kirsten, Haley was, hate complimenting her too, but Haley was very instrumental in us starting to work with families, because our big fear was, I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to do something wrong. I don't want to make a situation worse. So out of fear, we really didn't for a long time, because we just didn't want to screw it up. But Kirsten had been tagging us and stuff. And so like Haley was saying, when it came time when we decided to, I was like, this person has been asking, so let's do that. So it was kismet is the word that Haley used. I am not a scholar, so I didn't use that one, but I thought it was pretty cool. And so the Bexley boxes are incredible. Mandy and I have gotten to put 2 here locally for us, and it's just amazing. As all of us here, Haley is a dog parent, but you guys are moms, and you really, I think back a lot to the night that Kirsten gets the call that her husband's been shot. Her daughter, her 2.5-year-old daughter, is in the car, and you've got to be thinking, obviously about your husband, but now you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's my child seeing? What's going on? Who's comforting my child? I'm not there, all that stuff. So for her to take from her grief and to create this amazing thing that's like for all ages. Kids can end up in a police department because their parent gets arrested, because, you know, something's happened to them, anything. But to have these things where police officers can do their job and these kids have comfort and, you know, have something to cling on to in that moment is huge. Like, this is silly and not exactly the same thing, but my son had like an allergic reaction, back to what Haley was saying. A few years ago, we had to do an EpiPen, go to the hospital, and they gave him this little bear. And I can't tell you how much comfort that bear provided him. And we still have that bear. And it's just like this weird positive memory of a really crappy day, you know? And so just having this thing that can give them comfort or juice or anything, like to not focus on what's happening. I think it's incredible. And I'm so proud to be able to be any part of it. Done.
I just want to throw out there that it must be a Melissa thing with finances, because I don't like to do finances. So I make Melissa do all of our podcast stuff.
I do all of ours too. And I think that's probably how I ended up. We haven't been, knock on everything, we haven't been audited. So we're doing okay.
That's more right there.
That's it.
You're like, I've only filed the taxes once, but it's fine.
No, I'm like, we have a lady. We will pay a lady to help us in that side of it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Liz just loves spreadsheets. Give her a good spreadsheet. She's good to go.
I do love a good spreadsheet.
Mandy, what do you get to do with the Bright Again Foundation?
I think that I'm officially the program officer, but I don't really work in that capacity necessarily. Thank goodness, because I don't have any background in that type of work. But so I kind of just do. I really am we're all kind of doing the same thing. We all are working towards the goal of course, being able to curate these Bexley boxes and to get them placed in as many police stations across the country as possible. Long term, the foundation would like to start being able to place these boxes in other places where they might be needed, not just in police stations, but police stations is, of course, the number one goal. As Melissa said, we've had the opportunity to help gather up the items that go in a box. And Melissa, I know you and your husband have actually put these boxes together, you know, at your house, like with your own two hands, have built these boxes and filled them. And we've had a chance to go and take them. We actually had a box that we displayed at our table at CrimeCon, this past CrimeCon. And it would be great if we could take another box to CrimeCon this year, where it's logistically, I'm still figuring out how we could possibly make that happen, but I'm not really sure on that one. So I'm really I'm here for whatever I can do to help. I do all of the writing on our show. You know, we have Haley who does our wonderful research. I write from her research each episode. Melissa, you know, as we just kind of joked around, she handles a lot of like the super important things like our finances and making sure that people's emails get returned and things like that. Things that I am like
don't
really
put that on me, because that great.
So occasionally I will be asked, you know, to kind of help with the foundation, something with coming up with words for, you know, things like that. And then of course, anything I can to spread the word and actually physically help get these boxes into police stations, especially here locally to us in Central Florida. We're like really, really proud that we were able to have the two that we have been able to place here. And of course, are looking very forward to being able to get even more around our local area.
I love that. We had the opportunity to have one at True Crime Podcast Festival when it was here in Austin, because that's where I live. So the opportunity to be able for me, myself, Melissa helped me build the box when she came into town that week. So we were able to do that, get hands-on, figure out a way to pack it all cutesy in there, but make sure it fits and do it correctly. So it was truly an honor to be able to put one here in my city. So I absolutely loved being a part of that. We are missing one person. She's here now. I'm going to bring her in so that she's not just hanging out backstage by her lonesome. It is Haley's other half for True Crime Podcast Training. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, look at your hair.
Why don't you have a podcast? Your voice is amazing.
I know, right?
What the heck?
There's no time.
Yeah.
Should I?
Well, have at it.
Okay.
Free platform. Run wild.
I'm Andrea Marshbank. I met Haley through happenstance, and I am a former teacher. I taught high school English and debate for more than 5 years. I'm still licensed in the state of Kansas. And Haley introduced me to the true crime field, and I now work as a researcher and a writer for an array of podcasts. Namely, right now it's Southern Fried True Crime with Erica Kelly. And I have a blast. I love it so much. Haley and I co-founded the True Crime Podcast Training, which is probably the most exciting endeavor that I'm involved in to date. And it's going amazing. It's going really well.
Well,
That's
welcome.
awesome. Yes. Well, beyond that, being the high school English teacher, that's what like freaks me out the most about all of your jobs. I'm like, how did you do that? I have two that are about to be in high school, and I'm like, it's crazy out there.
Yeah, it's well, I left, so I don't. We don't need to give too many accolades.
No,
it was a great
time for some time. So yeah, definitely give you props for that. But you mentioned True Crime Podcast Training. So as we move on into like the advocacy sector of this conversation, when you and Haley were creating this, what precautionary measures did you guys decide on, or what did you use to teach students about when they were contacting families? I know Melissa and Mandy said they were nervous about contacting families. So what did you guys teach in your training about contacting families?
Yeah, well, just for context for anybody who's maybe not familiar with True Crime Podcast Training, I know our reach is large, but we offer 100% online training courses for people who want to enter the True Crime Podcast field as a team member. So primarily researchers, but also some people go on to be writers or host their own podcasts. And we were really purposeful about language choices when talking about contacting victims' families. And we tried to really leave an open space for a conversation. Haley and I have talked at length, and we talk about in our course at length about how there are multiple sides, multiple perspectives, and there are definitely, there's some good best practices that everybody needs to follow. Like, you need to do your research. You need to make sure you speak with kindness, with empathy. If people decide they don't want to talk to you midway through a research process, like, that has to be allowed. And I think that ultimately, we are just focused on creating a network of true crime podcast professionals, or helping to create a network of folks who are aware of victim advocacy, aware of ethical true crime, aware of victim-centered true crime. And so Haley has been so instrumental to that. She's such a leader in the victim advocacy field and in the field of true crime. And I know she could speak a lot more handily to like all of the different ways that people should be mindful when they talk to victims' families, because what a sensitive but important subject that we as true crime professionals get to navigate. So
awesome. Haley, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so I think that like Melissa and Mandy and I, we try to work with as many families as possible. And one thing that we've done, well, we've contacted families before, but a lot of the times what I think we found is that when you start working with families, like they're friends with other families, so then they'll put you in touch with them. And so it's a really big network. So a lot of the time we just get kind of referrals to, families that want to work with us. And so we try to be as sensitive as possible. I think one thing that I usually try to do if the family hasn't worked with a podcast before is I'll do like a little pre-interview call with them and just kind of break down what's going on, especially because it's Melissa, Mandy, and I. There's 3 of us. And so that can be kind of intimidating, like hopping on a call with, 3 people. So I try to explain our process. And then when we meet with families, we never ask super sensitive questions. A lot of the times what we're asking is, can you tell us a favorite memory of your loved one? And then things like, what can we do to help? And that has been, I think, the most fulfilling part for us, is learning how we can help a family. Like we asked that to Kirsten right again, and she, did come to us to help, and look what that changed our life. And we recently are working with a family who they wanted help with awareness, and we sent them to Season of Justice, and now they're getting a billboard. So I think that's one of the main things that we try to do, is how can we help, but also kind of how can our listeners help? Do you both want to add anything to that?
I mean, I would just say that I totally agree with you on that. And that's been a great question because we did run into that also with Vlada Castle's family, where they had a memorial they wanted to do, or not a memorial, rather,
A vigil.
a vigil. Thank you. I get those words confused. That they wanted to do, and they kind of weren't sure how they wanted to do it. So we were able to jump in and help. We don't know what we're doing, but like if you're okay taking our help, I'll do whatever. I want to help. So it was kind of a learning experience for us, and they were so. That family's so sweet, but they were just so thankful to have people there besides just their family, just remembering and thinking about Vladik and being hopeful that, he'll come home and stuff. So that was a Haley question that she added on there. And I've learned a lot from just like her little questionnaires that she puts together for people. And you can see how happy people are just to share like fun stories and stuff, because I don't think they always get to answer those kind of things. And so, I don't know, it's a very special thing to be able to have these conversations. I always go into each one terrified, because again, I don't want to screw up, and that's my entire personality, because I do screw up a lot. And, but every time I leave one, I feel like, okay, like we can be helpful here. We can do something. And a lot of them just want to be heard, like feel like you're really hearing them, not just like sound bites or anything like that. Like you really want to hear their story and aren't like picking it apart for, special little things. And I think that starting with Kirsten, having that be our first conversation with somebody that it was so raw, so recent and all of that, and being able to relate to her in a lot of ways, it really set the tone. And I think that made a huge difference for us going forward, working with families. Was that the question? I don't know where I ended up, but I don't know where I started, but I know where I ended.
That was perfect. And it's just essentially showing up for these families, because yes, I was able to attend Vladik's vigil as well. And they were just so thankful that there were people there. There were people that cared enough to help. And so that's really what a lot of these families are looking for.
Right.
I think too, approaching these, talks and interviews with families and keeping it, kind of in the vein, like asking only sensitive questions and giving them more of a chance to actually just open up and tell you what they would like to tell you. It really does give you such a much better insight into the family and what they have gone through. And you get such a better idea of the victim in the story that, we're about to talk about this person's life and the worst thing that's ever happened to them on our podcast. Like, I want to feel like I have an understanding of what happened in their story and feel some type of connection with them. And always, if it turns into something like we can help them put together a vigil, or we can do anything to, help whatever specific individualized thing that they need for the case, that they have in front of them, that's even better. But I feel like just getting to know the families at that personal level, it just not only does it make us feel better, but it actually makes the episode better that we're able to produce about them. It comes from the heart a lot more, and we actually feel like we know what we're talking about and can speak about these cases in a sensitive way, because we've sat and spoke with the families and have listened to them from their own mouths saying, what they've been through and how they're feeling. And that really reflects in the content that we put out as, true crime podcast creators.
I agree with you. I think it gives you a way to really inject those emotions. You have feelings that you felt learning about that person, and more so than just reading this information on your research, or it's not just a news article. You felt things when they were telling you these stories. So you have that emotional connection now, which is so important. And I think that it's one of those things that Melissa and Mandy, you guys have been podcasting for a while now, not as long as Lainey, we talked about her decades earlier, but y'all have been podcasting for quite some time now. Have you felt an evolution in the true crime industry to lean more towards the empathetic, the ethical side? Do you think that transition is happening?
Oh, 100%. I think it's so important, and it wasn't there when we started, but we were part of that too. So I can't, I'm not saying anything towards anyone else, where where you're really having to look at yourself, look at your show, look at what you're doing, and say, am I helping people? Am I doing something that's causing somebody harm, causing somebody pain? I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. So I want to be able to do something that I can feel proud about and that is helping other people. I don't think when we started almost 7 years ago, that was quite where it was yet. I'm thankful it is now. I'm very thankful. I think there's, more changes to be had and there's more things we can do, but I feel like the ship is steering in the right direction now. And I hope families feel that way. And I hope the people who it really matters to feel that way. But I even feel like our listeners are more committed to wanting to see changes and learning about people, and they're having this connection beyond just the episode. And I think that's very important, and I'm glad to see changes being made, I guess.
But we also are glad to see that. Hopping back over to the true crime podcast training world, how do you, Andrea, take what you have known in your teaching experience and use it in your everyday life now as the co-founder, creator, CEO, head teaching extraordinaire in TCPT?
Yeah, I think that my teaching background really gave a place to start in the sense of like showing people something new, which is kind of the crux of learning. But we get a lot of folks who are interested in true crime podcast training and in working for true crime podcasts who maybe haven't been familiarized with ethical true crime or victim advocacy in really any capacity. Like they've listened to true crime, they've watched true crime shows, and they're in a very different space when they start than when they finish the program. And I think that like what a beautiful amount of growth that is, what a meaningful, important thing. But it sometimes can be challenging to overcome like the concept that not all true crime is like ethical for victims or thinking about victims' families. And so I think that part of my teaching experience was helping guide a person from point A to point B, and doing so in a way that's like filled with empathy and kindness for their growing process, because sometimes learning can be challenging, especially when you're kind of rethinking every engagement you've ever had with the true crime sphere. And so I think that has been really a great thing that teaching has brought from my background to the training program. And also like language choices throughout the course and trying to make sure that we talk about people as people and not people as stories, because they're so much more than that. And I think that it's really exciting to see the sphere of true crime kind of eke more toward understanding that there are lives behind people's, the things that we hear on podcasts.
Exactly. Haley, what advice do you have for any individuals or organizations that are looking to build effective partnerships or networks in advocacy? What would you suggest they do, or how they would start this process of getting into the advocacy work?
You're muted. It's almost like you've never done this before.
It's for the best.
What a mess. So what I was saying was that I think one of the easiest things you can start out by doing is just sharing missing person flyers or unsolved homicide flyers. Light the Way, this incredible advocacy group that I am so happy to partner with, they do missing poster Mondays. And so all day they're just sharing posters of missing people. And so that's what you can do is just start sharing those. Like that's a really great first step. It doesn't cost anything. And then I think through that, if you, reach out to groups that are helping people, like you could reach out to Navigating Advocacy or Light the Way and just ask, is there anything I can do to help? Like, one of our recent students, I'm going to shout her out, Charity, she's probably watching. She is super interested in advocacy and has come to Andrea and I and asked us, how can I help? And we did tell her about missing the posters, and she's been sharing those. She's also reached out to a family that she wants to work with, and just kind of creating those friendships. And but what I was going to say is that she's a really good writer, and I think she works in marketing. So she's like really good at press releases. And so I mentioned to her, that's another really easy thing that you can do with families is reach out to, you know, like a Justice For page or something like that and say, how can I help? You know, I have this particular set of skills. I'm really good at writing press releases. Are there any that you want to be released? Melissa, Mandy, and I have sent out press releases for Vladik's case and been able, Bethany, his sister, has been able to get multiple interviews based on these press releases. And that helps spread awareness of her brother's case. So, I mean, these are free ways that you can help. And like, truth be told, I use ChatGPT to write these press releases. I mean, it really helps.
Secrets. No, this is
I
great.
know.
Everybody loves ChatGPT.
Yeah. No, it's just so helpful. So those are just some really easy ways that we've helped. If you're able to help monetarily, you can always donate. Melissa, Mandy, and I have helped pay for flyers before, postcards. You know, those are not too costly. So those are just some really easy ways. But I suggest reaching out to like a Justice For page and say, how can I help you? And just kind of go from there. It gets easier, I would say. The first time you work with a family is nerve-wracking, like Melissa and Mandy and I were saying earlier. We were nervous. And you are nervous to meet for a family for the first time because you don't want to mess things up. But if you have the best of intentions, I think that will shine through. And it, like I said, it gets easier the more experience you have. And we're all here to provide any type of advice. You know, you can reach out to me at any time and I'm happy to steer you in the right direction.
She literally means anytime. There's times I've texted her at midnight and she's still awake. Just saying.
She doesn't sleep. I don't know how she does it. She just powers through every day and night and just keeps working.
She's learning that 30-year-old body doesn't keep up as quick, though.
That is true. That I feel like when I turned 30, I was like, oh, it's actually hard to stay up all night and not be exhausted the next day. So that's fun, but it's okay.
I shared a hotel with her and she was going to sleep at like 6 a.m. as I was getting up. I'm like, what are you doing, you wild girl? And I'd like to say she was out partying, but she was not.
She was probably researching for Melissa and Mandy.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, they make me work all night.
What happened? I don't even know how she got off to do this.
She put in
PTO. Like, I'm waiting for an episode to write.
I crack the whip. It'll be like 9 p.m. I'm like, Haley, don't forget to stay up all night. I'm going to bed. Please have this ready by the time I wake up.
We know, my Melissa and I know how difficult it is to reach out to families, especially early on. The first family we reached out to was the family of Brandon Lawson. And we looked over that message on Facebook for a good 3 days, it felt like, before we hit send on it. I mean, it was probably more like 20 minutes, but it felt like forever. Is this the correct sentence? Is this the correct way we should say this? Should we even hit send on this? It's so nerve-wracking. It does get easier. And the more families we've worked with, we know what we're doing is right. And we know that we're taking the right path and helping with these families any way we can. We kind of had to evolve into that. We too came from a not great name. We were just true crime content consumers and we kind of talked about this a little bit with Lainey. We started over a glass of wine. So of course we included wine in our name because who wouldn't? And when we met that first family, we were like, absolutely not. We've got to do something different. And I think it's an evolution that everyone kind of goes through because you don't know what you're doing is wrong. You learn, you transition. And I know that Mandy and Melly had that transition as well. You changed your name. Y'all did a rebranding as well. How did y'all come to that conclusion? Was it similar that you just realized that you needed something different?
Well, yes. Our original name was Moms and Murder. Very catchy. Very disturbing to hear your young child say it. So there was partially that, but also Haley kind of mentioned it. She was like, working with families and stuff. And we hadn't quite put that together because it's like after you say something so many times, it kind of loses the meaning, which sounds terrible. But like, so I wasn't even putting the murder part together. And if you're working with families where someone's missing, they don't want to assume that they've been murdered, So it didn't feel right. I talked to Laura as well, Laura Norton with the Fall Line, who's a great advocate and wonderful person all around, but don't tell her I ever said that. And she's always, I will say, like, since the beginning, she's one person, Haley as well, of course, but she's one person where I feel like I never felt judged in the true crime space, where she was very willing to like offer advice when you've asked, offer support, but I never felt like she was like, I'm doing this right and you're doing it wrong, idiot. Although she might have said that in her head, she never made me feel that way. And so it's nice to have people like that to be friends with and to have relationships with that kind of keep you on your toes. I'm not answering the question again, but kind of keep you on your toes and like and challenge you in a way that really worked for us. So us making that transition, people thought it was something dramatic. It wasn't dramatic at all. We just were like, okay, if we're going to change it from moms and murder, we need another M. I think Haley was the one that came up with mysteries, and we were like, okay, done. Like we're not fighting it. Like this is the way things are going, and like let's do it. Like that's the right thing to do. We felt like at the time, for sure.
Yeah. At the time that we decided to change the name of the podcast, we had already been doing the podcast for like over 5 years. So it was really difficult to come to that decision to change the name. And that's kind of why we didn't go too far off with the rebranding. We didn't make a whole new logo. We didn't change really anything about the show other than the types of cases we were doing. And we, said that we were going to be working more with families directly and covering some stories that might not always have, involve a murder, but we're going to start doing some more mysteries and things like that. And so we just kind of like, Melissa, we didn't really even make a big announcement about it.
Like we did it that way.
We did it like on New Year's Eve at midnight one year and woke up and like there was people who didn't even realize it for like several weeks. They would write us and be like, did you guys change your name? We're like, yeah, we did. But like everything looks the same. So we kind of tried to just not make a big deal out of it just because we already had, built what we had built with Moms and Murder. And yeah, that too. We didn't want to start completely over from scratch.
Well, I'm sorry that I put it out there in the world on blast for you just now. Sorry about that.
No. No. But it was kind of at a time when, we were seeing this shift in the way true crime, content was going. And we really wanted to make sure that we were on the right side of that shift. And because helping people, of course, is at the end of the day, really very important to both of us. And if we can use our platform to help people, why wouldn't we do that? And especially after making a name for ourselves and being around for as long as we have. Of course, there's podcasts that have been around much longer than we have. But I feel like at a certain point, it's just like, it's not just about entertainment value. It's about, we're talking about people and real families and real things that happened in their lives. And we should try to help them in some way if we're going to continue doing the show. So that was kind of the rebirth of our podcast.
I love that. So Andrea, what is coming up for True Crime Podcast Training? And whatever other projects you guys got going on.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. We are going to True Crime Podcast Fest this summer in July. Like Lainey was talking about, we're a big fan of straightforward names. And that's also where we started last year. It was our inaugural debut. We're going to be next year. I don't know if you've heard of it. We're also going to Advocacy Con in 2025. So very exciting on all fronts there. But yeah, we're constantly looking at the curriculum and updating it. Haley always has great insights as she continues to expand her career with victim advocacy. So we are always making changes and making sure that we are promoting the best practices as we know them in the moment. So yeah, those are some exciting things we have.
Yeah, I would say that we completely redid the ethics module that we had when we first started. I thought it was great, but then as I have, like Andrea said, grown and learned more and worked with more families, we've just learned more. And so we completely redid the whole module And now it's even bigger and way more involved. And we have, we're going to keep evolving it and hopefully adding some tips on how to help families if that's what you want to do. Like we also have, when we talk to students, we talk about those things as well. So yeah, I'm really excited for the future. And I love that we continue to grow and change. It's not just the same program, it's like we're learning things. Or I'm embarrassed to tell you how many times I've been like, oh my gosh, I forgot this tip. Can we add in like a little box about it?
The amount of
always so nice.
FAQs.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to take up all of your time this evening. So Mandy, Melissa, do you have any exciting upcoming things or project plugs? Now's your time to shine. Have at it, girls.
If you're looking for a place to donate, the Bright Again Foundation, we're on the board, but I don't care. I would say it anyway. It's a great foundation. We talk about Bexley boxes. Please, 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 if you are so inclined, donate there. Yeah. And then like any of our stuff doesn't even matter. So just do that.
You could find us everywhere if you really are interested.
Well, you're going to Crime Con.
We are.
But I didn't think it would be a good idea to say that on here.
Oh, you can say it.
But like,
Safe space.
okay, we'll be at Crime Con, which is a good thing. I will say, okay, I will just say this. I do feel like the first time Mandy and I went to Crime Con, which was 2019, Mandy, I can't remember, something like that.
I think so.
And then this last time we went, I do feel like if you went and you maybe didn't like the focus before, I think they are also taking steps into changing what they're putting out there. I'm not trying to promote getting people to go there or anything. Obviously, go to Advocacy Conference. Can I go?
Do you guys have a code for CrimeCon?
Let's not do that. Just go to the Bright Again Foundation and give your money there. And we'll be fine.
Melly, I only brought it up because you said that you wanted to bring a Bexley box there. So if anyone is going to CrimeCon, you're going to hopefully have a box there.
I don't know. We'll see, Haley, because that's going to take like Santa Claus and his whole sleigh because we have to travel from Florida to Nashville to get to CrimeCon. So I'm not really sure how we will.
I think it can be done.
Okay.
I have an idea. I'll text you after.
Okay. Please do.
I'm tired.
But if
you can text me, Haley. I'll be awake until at least, I don't know, another hour.
At the very least, I'm sure you'll have a flyer about Bexley boxes there.
Absolutely.
So go get a sticker and some info at the very least.
Thank you, Whitney. And
you're welcome.
Other Melissa.
All right. Well, we'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. All of their links are somewhere in the chat now. We've dropped them in sporadically. We appreciate y'all so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And now it's just me and Melissa. We've got a couple true crime greats coming up for the end of our live stream. One of them is lovingly known as the grandfather of true crime. He's going to hate us for that, but it's okay.
Not because he's old, okay?
No.
Just because he literally started the true crime podcasting.
It's true. It's true. We'll grab Justin first, and then we're going to have Nina shortly after that. Huh.
It's better than Granddaddy, so.
Well, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. We didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
How have you been, Justin?
I'm doing okay. I don't know. I was doing a bunch of stuff and then I was like, oh, it's like 6:30. I got to go jump on. And then I was like, oh, wait, I'm not on until 8. And then I'm like in the ADHD freeze where I'm like, I can't do anything for the next hour and a half.
I think you just diagnosed me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I have one meeting. My day has to be cleared.
Yeah.
We have been talking about this meeting literally all day long to make sure we are prepared for it. And then we go live and the first 10 seconds it doesn't work, so we had to start all over. But it's fine.
Yeah, it's all fine. We're just in that
Yeah.
burning room. Everything's fine.
Yeah. I'm bringing Nina on now.
Okay.
She is also one of the true crime greats who has been around for a few years. I'm not going to say decades again because that got me in trouble already twice today. So, welcome,
Hi.
Nina.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for being here.
I
Yeah,
feel
I've got
like I
8
haven't
years
seen.
coming up.
Oh, I might be frozen. I feel like I haven't seen you two in so long.
Aw. Well, you're gonna see us soon, right?
Oh, yes.
When? June? I don't know. When will we see? July?
Yeah, is it
July.
July? Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a ways away.
yeah.
It
It
is a
is.
way.
It's soon.
Yeah. Soonish. The way time's flying these days, it'll be here before we know it.
By the time I get my bed made, it'll be time to go.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about why we have you guys coming on, because both of you guys are coming to Indianapolis in just a year from today, right, Justin? Right?
Yep. Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. We're so excited to have you guys with us to help us with this important cause. Nina, let's talk to you first. Why were you interested in joining us for Advocacy Con?
Well, both for the work that I do on the podcast and then also for the work that I do with Missing in Michigan as a missing persons advocate. I feel like there are other states that could be duplicating the efforts that we have in Michigan and making a real impact in their missing persons cases.
I love that. Your role as a victim advocate is so inspiring. You do so much.
Thank you.
Just being certified alone is amazing. But what you do, I mean, it's not just the Facebook group. You are so involved in being hands-on with not just sharing information, but really getting in there and doing, whether it's donating or helping people find the resources that they need. It's truly inspirational.
Thank you. It's very important to me that if I have the ability to help someone, be it financially or in other ways, I try and do what I can.
Love that. Love that. So, Justin, what's your reasoning behind coming to hang out with us in Indy?
It's just to support the cause, and I know that the true crime genres can be a little I don't know, exploitive and stuff. And I never want to do that. So if nothing else, I want to support the movement. I want to support people that are trying to make it a better place, really.
Do you envision the future of true crime changing? Do you see the shift happening? I know a lot of people have talked about this shift. Do you feel it since you're the grandfather and have been around since you created your number 2 podcast, number 2 true crime podcast?
Yeah, I think it was number 2. That's scary. Yeah. There's a lot more than just that, though. I know you guys have already talked about the shift of making it far more just a better place in general and advocating for families. But on top of that, I see a shift in social media, like TikTok and short form videos too. I think that's like catching on. So the long form, even a podcast like mine, that's just one episode a week, that's an hour long, as opposed to a deep dive, serialized version. Well, now you can go on TikTok or, whatever shorts, whatever, and you hear people just summarizing things about crimes and cases, which can't really get any nuance there. So it's just more clickbaity. And I think that's something that we'll have to sort of, I don't know if you have to combat it, but it's something that's going to be added to the genre.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make it more difficult because you do have these TikTokers all the time just popping up. And I'm like, holy crud, what are they even talking about? But technology, especially social media, has played a good role in advocacy work as well. So Nina, with your Missing in Michigan Facebook page, I know you're an admin on that. How do you think that has helped the technology side and the social media played a role in actually trying to advocate for these families?
Well, so often I'll make a post about a missing person and someone will comment, well, I live in that community and I haven't heard anything about this. And it's because social media is the first place to get the story of someone that's missing or of an unsolved case that's maybe vintage, for lack of a better term. And they didn't know anything about it. It's one of the things I like to focus on my podcast is taking these old cold cases that people may not be familiar with and pushing it back out so that people that are in that community can be like, wait a minute, I grew up there, or my mom grew up there, or I know someone there. I'm going to ask them about it and make the conversations happen organically.
Love it. I always see you bumping the older posts on that page, and it's amazing because I'm like, oh, let me look into this one now that hasn't been talked about in quite a while.
And I like to see the different demographics you reach with different social media. You've got the younger generations that are utilizing TikTok, like Justin said, the short form videos, because young kids they're not on Facebook. They don't care about Facebook anymore. It's Instagram or it's TikTok or YouTube Shorts. They don't take the time to sit there and scroll, whereas us elders like to scroll a little bit and hang out on Facebook. So you're reaching different people using the different platforms. Some people don't even listen to podcasts, even though that's what all four of us do. Some people don't even listen to that, but they'll follow our social media to learn some things.
Right.
So it's very interesting on how it can be beneficial. And we like to always say that, action-oriented advocacy is big for us. A simple flyer share is quick, it's easy, and it's essentially harmless as long as you're sharing the correct and updated information.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the reach that you can get with that. I think Melissa and I have talked about how there was a quarterback, yay sports, but there was a quarterback for the LA Rams or someone like that tweeted out an Amber Alert. And within 15 minutes, one of his followers saw the vehicle because it had reached over 100,000 people. It's just amazing at how quickly something like that can happen.
Absolutely.
It's the most minimal effort you can do. It's just like, retweet, repost. So yeah.
But the visibility is so important. I see it in the group. We've got 120,000 members, and I'll see that some posts get liked and shared and other posts don't get liked and shared. And it's like, wait a minute. So I've partnered with other groups so that if something comes to me, I can go to them and say, hey, will you share this with your neighborhood group or your community group? And that elevates the visibility of the post, which is important.
Yeah, that's awesome. That collaboration effort
Yes.
goes a long way. Whitney and I were going to do an event in, oh my gosh, what city? Jackson, Mississippi, right?
Oh,
yes.
And there's a lot going on in Jackson, Mississippi. And I was speaking with a Facebook admin of a large group there, and they advised we don't do an event there because of how dangerous this particular area was, but as well as all of the controversies going on. Yeah. So we actually moved our event. It was unreal.
Okay.
There was also a lot of hurdles that shouldn't be in place for what we were doing. We were wanting to do a honk and wave event. It's a very peaceful protest situation. We're standing on a street corner with some signs for missing persons and unsolved cases. It's a harmless event, but we had to go through, was it 32 different departments for a permit?
Yes. Yeah.
It's still, and it had to be more than 14 days in advance. And that was 2 months ago, and it still isn't approved.
Just put one of your kids on the corner and say, it's a birthday party and we're social distancing. Just everybody waves, but then you put your signs up. I don't know.
Yeah. They have like a lot of laws in Mississippi where you can't just be on a street corner protesting. Anyway, it's like a whole freedom of speech thing. It's ridiculous. Wow. So,
and we had lengthy conversations about, imagine if you're a family member and you're just trying to do something small, even having a vigil counted as this, having any event that would be related to that victim, you would have to go through this arduous step. And they still text Melissa and say, oh, we're going to have a meeting to review all the permits. But ours couldn't even get approved through the 32 different places. And it was going to be $400 and something. It
was ridiculous. Yeah.
And
I'm like, I couldn't imagine being a family member trying to advocate and get my loved one's story out there in any form and having to go through all of that. Absolutely ridiculous.
It is.
So yeah, that was not a fun time. So we ended up going to Shreveport, Louisiana, where they really didn't have any laws or anything to do. So,
Yes.
There you go.
But it's fine. We'll get off our soapbox with that. That's just know that it's difficult to do things in Mississippi. Nina, let's talk a little bit about your certified victims advocacy, your certification.
Yes.
A lot of people didn't even know that's something.
Yes, it is. I learned about it when I covered a court case 2 years ago now here in Georgia. There were certified victims advocates sitting with the family members of the murder victim. And I was really curious about what they were doing because they were there every day and they were super friendly. And I chatted with them just in passing. And I thought, I need to look this up. And it turns out most courts do have something like that where they will sit with the family of the victim and provide support during the trial. There are also victims advocates that go with police to make notifications, and then they'll stay with the family and assist them. And sometimes, depending on the department, they will stay with that family, not physically, but throughout the process of the investigation, the arrest, the court, and provide support and advise the families. And it seems like such an important thing to do. And if you want to get involved, it's a really excellent way to get involved in victim advocacy and working with families. I've been working with families since 2017, and I learned so much in this course. Really recommend it.
I can only imagine if somebody's missing their daughter or some family member has been murdered, where do you even start? And
Right.
that's where the victim's advocate comes in and says, here's the people you need to call. Here's what you need to do. And because you're in shock. So
yes. And you need someone who's level-headed and engaged, but not involved to support you during that time.
Yeah.
Can you give us kind of the Cliff Notes versions of the things you learned on how to support someone in that?
You know, the big thing that the course focused on was leaving your biases at the door and coming in from just a very open, understanding place and not making sure that you're not pushing your own agenda onto the person, which I was like, but then I thought, okay, I can totally see that because you're going to have preconceived notions about someone depending on the circumstances of the incident, depending on their living situation, depending on where you go. And you find yourself in a situation where the police are like, okay, we need you to support this family. And they're going to be angry. They're going to be upset. They're going to be in shock. And you have to sort of buffer all of this and be supportive without being reactive. And that lack of reaction is so important because it makes you better able to support them.
Yeah, I would have problems with the reaction part.
Yes.
That would be what I'd have to learn the most. I've looked into it various times. And actually, I think Whitney and Haley and I have considered doing it. But yeah, that's amazing that you did that. I can only imagine the valuable insight that you got, especially working with families.
Yes.
Can only help.
Yes.
Justin, in your time in this genre, have you had the opportunity to work with any organizations or resources that stood out in particular to you that you really enjoyed working with, or you felt provided a great need to families?
The three I can think of off the top of my head, the DNA DOE project, DNA Solves, and the In the Backlog. And I've contributed a lot of money to In the Backlog. And it's insane to me that there isn't a budget to test rape kits.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's always, we need to fund and put more people on the ground. And I'm like, but what does that matter if you're not funding the back end? If there's not enough prosecutors to prosecute, if there's not enough public defenders to even defend, and if there's not enough money to even test a DNA kit, what are we doing here? So it's kind of like an infrastructure bill. Nobody thinks it's, the interesting thing, but I'm like, no, this is how you get the serial killer. This is how you get the perpetrator that's been doing this over and over again to multiple victims. So.
Those are amazing. Nina, did you have a few that or different ones than those three that you wanted to contribute?
I mainly focus on missing persons, so that's where my focus tends to be. And then also I've taken an interest in Crime Stoppers because they're doing really important work in the community, very grassroots, working with families and trying very hard to bring closure to cases that aren't as media grabbing as others.
Sure. That is one thing. When we first met, Nina, we were put in, we talked about this earlier when we had Lainey on at the beginning about how the True Crime Podcast Festival was our first live anything. And we talked about the importance of collaboration and how she put us with you. And it's just amazing that the friendships that was formed through that festival alone. I mean, that's where we met Justin for the first time. Literally, that's where we started, was let's just chalk it up to Kansas City being what did it for us. But when we were able to collaborate with you, we covered Bryce Laspiza's story.
Yes.
And that wasn't the first missing person story that we talked about, but it was the first one that really, I want to say, like, we dove into and we developed a relationship with the information that we were given. And I know that sounds cliche, or I don't even know what I would call that, but we developed a emotion to that script that we worked with together. So what you do for missing people and really taking that on is truly amazing. To continuously put that out there and make sure that they're not forgotten. So I'm just like, I want to applaud you all the time, both of you, for that matter. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to like fangirl for the next 30 minutes.
It's always nice to share the stage with you guys or Nina, so it's always good.
Yeah. We've also done several live shows with Justin, and he's a hoot. Everyone's always there to see Justin. No one's ever there to see me and Melissa, but it's fine. We love it anyway.
I will take it. It's
So let's talk a little bit about the biggest challenges that you guys have encountered throughout your journey within this genre.
Do you want to go first, Nina? I got a short answer.
Well, for me, it's coming up against doing Freedom of Information Act requests and coming up against you can't have it. It's an open investigation and it's a 30 or 40 or 50-year-old case. And that is incredibly frustrating. I understand that it's the policy of the department, and I think it's generally a terrible policy, but that's been a real challenge for me as a creative, trying to get the information so that I can put something out and look at some of these older cases. I also had really bad COVID brain fog for about 1.5 years and couldn't write. So that has been my most recent challenge, but thankfully I seem to be over it.
It took me about 2 years to get over mine.
Yeah, it was no joke.
Yeah, it's no joke.
Could not tell by listening to your guys' podcast. You guys seemed perfect. So
thank you.
Lots of editing.
Yes. Yes. Shout out to Bill, my editor.
I have a couple things, I guess. One, I guess I care too much. So whenever I see a case that you guys post or any podcast posts or just a news article, I get really discouraged when I read the comments, because a lot of the times they're really toxic and shitty, and they're, just going after, victim blaming and whatnot. And that it's just really hard to read those kind of things. But another thing that's really, it's not hard, but it's something that it's really challenging, or kind of, I don't know. It's difficult to navigate when you are advocating for a family. You are trying to bring awareness to their case, and then maybe the sister's engaging with you, and you're going through them, and then like some uncle comes out of the blue and says, I don't want you talking about this case. Or maybe the uncle is the suspect in the case, and that's always a curiosity. It's always like, how do you respond? Because you want to have the family's blessing, but if the family is not on the same page, then it's just that, am I doing the right thing telling this story, or should I back off? I'm sure you guys have come across that several times.
Yes.
So
Yes, that's very difficult. And you're like, who do you trust, or who are you going to get the information from? And it
Yeah.
could be vastly different information between the two different family members. So yeah, definitely a tough spot.
Yeah.
We don't want to make anyone unhappy with our coverage. We're doing this for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Yes. It's hard to be a people pleaser in this industry because you're trying to make everyone happy, and it's difficult at times as you're trying to put out content that people actually want to listen to, but you really want to do it in an ethical manner and not be sensationalized. So it's a very fine line you have to walk.
Yeah. But I see one of your questions for me, and it's what pointers do you give true crime content creators? And to build off of what we just talked about, it's all about intention. And if you are coming from a good place, you're coming from, I want to help this family, I want to bring awareness to this case, you're probably going to be covered. I mean, that's 90% of the hard part, is you got to come from a good place and with good intentions. When it comes to new creators, I mean, there's no easy way to say this, but why are you doing it? And what are you bringing to the table? I mean, are you just two more people talking about true crime, or are you going to have a direction, a purpose? Because that's the transition I think a lot of us have made, is I just don't want to be two guys talking about true crime. It's, well, what's the point? Like, why should people listen? What's my call to action to give this audience to go do something and make a change? Yeah. If you want to build on that, Nina, go ahead.
My degrees are in history and writing. So I want people to remember what happened in their community and how it impacts the community going forward, which is why I tend to cover so many cases from the Detroit area. And I try and reach people in that area, because they don't realize that the reason that this is this way, or school lets out this way, or this neighborhood does this, is because of something that happened in the 80s or 90s that they may not even know about.
I mean, I've brought it up many times on my podcast when I cover a case that deals with Kansas City, and a lot of people don't understand how redlined Kansas City is down the middle. And I mean, you can't skate around that. You have to bring it up. You have to bring up the history of the policing in this area, or the culture in this area, because it's always somewhat valid to the storytelling.
Yes.
I think that can also extend into just general geography. When we first started with Brandon Lawson's case, every podcast we had heard, or everything that we read, was talking about how he had ran into the woods, but he was in Central Texas. There is no woods in East Central Texas. There's a whole bunch of mesquite trees and cactus and cacti and trenches and hog holes, but there is no woods in East Central or West Central Texas. So that was one reason that we really wanted to get out there and see the landscape and provide a better visual of what could have possibly happened out there, which provides a little bit more insight. It's not as important as historical data, but it's relevant regardless.
Oh, it absolutely is important to understanding the case, is to actually understand the geography of where the incident occurred. It's not relevant in every case, but in that case in particular, yes, I'm from the Midwest. I'm picturing pine trees and maple trees and, and that's not what it was at all.
It's
right.
Desert almost.
Right.
It's exactly. Real rough terrain.
Like scrub.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you both share a success story, I guess you could call it, or example where your advocacy efforts led to tangible change?
Oh, I can't think of a lot off the top of my head, but one time that I felt really good, like Aaron and I have really been doing the right thing. We were going up to talk about a case live in front of an audience, and a FBI investigator came up and shook our hands and said, "I want to introduce you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like I had no idea who this guy was or anything. And what was that TWA flight that crashed off of
Was it 850?
was it 850? It was the one that everyone thought it was like shot down. What was it? TWA flight. God, now I'm
800.
800. Yeah. So Aaron and I covered that case, and there was a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding it. People saying it was shot down or whatever. And I'm very much a skeptic, and I very much debunk conspiracy theories. And a lot of people died in that plane wreck. And he wanted to introduce us because he was one of the investigators that dived to the bottom of the ocean to recover the bodies. And he said our podcast was the only one he listened to where he didn't want to throw his, phone through the wall. He loved us and thought we were very respectful. And I know that's not like a success for an individual family or anything, but just the fact that if this guy thought we did a good job, and he was very proud, and like I was very proud that he was just like, yeah, you guys knocked it out of the park, and thank you for covering it in a respectful manner. That was really good to hear from me. And it was like the one time where I was like, oh, how we present the content actually matters.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is
I think
amazing.
that's a great example, because it does make a difference on how you present it.
Yeah.
Huh. Love it. What about you, Nina?
So in 2018, I covered the case of Kim King, who was a 12-year-old girl who went missing from Warren, Michigan. And my coverage of her case got the Warren police to reopen it, which led to a massive investigation, which was unfortunately curtailed by COVID. But they were digging for the remains of other missing girls, and they assigned detectives to her case and got the Michigan State Police involved and the FBI involved. And it was really just overwhelming how it snowballed. And I'm very grateful that they actually took a second look, which is something her sisters never thought would happen.
Yeah. When you can actually get a case reopened and looked at, it's just,
Yes.
yeah.
That's amazing, because that is not an easy feat by any means.
No, and I made a lot of phone calls and yelled at a lot of people to get stuff moving, and it worked. So
props to you.
Yeah.
Well, I got very lucky when I went to the police station they said I could look at her file because the records clerk went to grade school with her. So he said, I'm going to let you look at the file, but you can't tell anybody I let you look at the file. But then everybody knew that I looked at the file because
breaking news.
Yes. But yeah, I got very lucky in that case.
The Goodyear blimp flew by. Nina looked at the file.
Don't ask her what it's about. Love it. So what kind of resources would you want to see at Advocacy Con, or what do you think would help families the most? Experts or different types of nonprofits? Do you guys have any ideas or thoughts?
Therapy dogs.
Yes.
Already on the list.
Oh, good.
We specifically picked this hotel because they would allow it. The other hotels we talked to said that we could not have them.
Nina, is there a national thing for victims advocates that maybe you could?
There is a national organization for victims advocates to become a victims advocate. And I don't know, now that you say that, I'm thinking, well, I wonder if survivors, family members would be interested in doing something like that and learning more about it, and taking what they've dealt with and using it to help other people. I know we have a lot of missing persons advocates that we work with in Missing in Michigan who actually have missing loved ones. So I'm always very comfortable turning a family member over to them because I know they're going to be handled well.
Yeah. And I know people are coming from all over the country, so it's hard because I'm like, well, maybe like a women's shelter, or maybe something like that, but it would probably be more local than something that would be nationwide. But the DNA Doe project, and stuff like
Season
that.
of Justice.
Yeah,
Yes.
those definitely could be helpful.
Yeah, and Seasons of Justice is local to Indianapolis, so we are 90% sure they're coming. They say they are. We're going to hold them to it. We're just gonna put it out there that they are coming, then they'll have to come, right?
Yeah.
Let's force them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but if we had some like local like domestic violence or women's shelters, then just the people that go back to their home, they can look up those type of resources in their area, which would be ideal. But yes, we plan on having a few of those at the event as well.
We also are forever open for anyone listening into this live stream. If they have any sort of suggestion outside of the box, you know, we've tossed around a few, just this is sneak peek behind the curtain here. A few items that we were talking about is working with local universities to have graphic designers on hand, because some people don't even know how to create a missing flyer. Some people don't know how to create a Facebook page. So, or things of that nature where we can have booths available. Do you need help with this? Let us walk you through this process, or let us create this flyer for you and email it to you so you have it with the correct information, because a lot of times the flyers that are created out there don't have correct information. We've worked with Haley on a case, or I worked with Haley on a case out of Arkansas where it didn't have the correct date a woman went missing, as well as her name was misspelled. So how is that going to help anyone? Little things like that, which may not be a specific resource, but it could provide something for these families that they may not have access to.
I also wonder about offering things like the child find kits. I know I've seen those at different events, that something where you can take it home and do the fingerprint and the photo and whatnot might be a good resource to have for anybody who's attending.
Yeah, agreed. They used to do it in school back in the day, but I haven't seen it in a long time.
No.
Yeah, Identikid was when I was a kid. It was Identikid.
Yeah.
I've been kicking around an idea of doing kind of a very basic way of locking down your, social media and making yourself private online. I know there's companies like Delete Me and whatnot, but if something, there's steps you can do yourself and not pay any money that really will secure you. And if it's, if somebody's being stalked by, a crazy ex, or if, something like that, there's ways, because I've systematically removed my address and all identifying markers for myself over the last few years. And every year I annually go out and search for myself and search for where I find my address and stuff like that. So yeah, something I've kicked around too.
That
Smart.
would be, super informative. It's
Absolutely
scary out there.
Well, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for your guys' time. Please share any upcoming projects, where you're going to be next, whatever you've got going on. We know that Justin will be in Nashville here in a little bit. Nina, what do you got going on coming up?
I've got the Missing in Michigan event on May 23rd at Madonna University, which is my alma mater. Very excited to be hosted by them again this year. Cool. And that's Thursday, May 23rd from 1 to 4. It's open to the public.
Oh,
excellent. We're focusing on human trafficking this year. Going to have some great speakers.
Okay, that's awesome.
I'll be in Nashville. Obviously, I'll be in Denver for True Crime Podcast Festival. And I think this year, Aaron and I are going to do a special multi-part series case about media biased and media corruption, and covering a particular case that they really got it wrong on that. So, yeah.
Wow. Ooh, looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, for spending your Thursday evening with us. We've shared all of your not contact information. That was not what we would share. Your social medias. It's
Justin's home address, the license plate number of his car.
I'm trying to get that off the internet.
We were testing out his skills, if he actually got it off of there or not. Tune in later to find out. Yeah. All of your podcast information, social media stuff, we'll be sharing that again. Thank you for coming. Thank you all for tuning in with us. This has been a very long live stream, and my brain is done for the evening.
Tired. Thank you.
And no, I'm just kidding. Bye. Thank you guys so much.
Good seeing all your smiling faces. Cool.
Bye.
For those of you still here, don't forget that our early bird pricing for tickets for Advocacy Con ends March 31st at midnight. So get it now while you can. You can go to advocacycon.com. You can just donate towards a family member's attendance or just donate to our cause if you would like. We have a few other exciting things coming to help get Advocacy Conference up and going. And everyone you saw here tonight will be present somehow. The Bride Again Foundation will be there, True Crime Podcast Training, Nina with Already Gone, Justin, Lainey, Josh. They're all going to be with us in Indianapolis in March of 2025. So join us.
Can't wait to see you guys there.
Bye.
Bye.